The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Well, welcome everybody. Idaho Signal's on the air, and as you can see, the Senate is at ease. They were in the 14th order, which is the amending order, where they were flying through some bills, trying to get them prepared for their actual vote. Welcome everybody. My name is Matt Edwards. It's a pleasure to have you here on a Friday. We've gotten through this week. It's fantastic. We're going to get through a lot of stuff today because we have an announcement about next week and what you can expect from us next week. So we'll see how it goes. So that's it. Over in the House, they are going through their business as well. We'll keep tabs on there. If anything comes up, we'll switch over there and see what those yahoos over there are doing. But it's good to have you here. All right, real quick, I want to get you on some quick updates here because yesterday was a pretty wild day. A lot of breaking news here in Idaho. First off, the governor signed House Bill 345, which puts some of those guardrails on Medicaid. If you were watching yesterday, you saw Brian Allman with us being distracted by a bunch of lefty protesters down in front of the Capitol yesterday because they didn't like that bill one bit. Now, of course, it wasn't as harsh as some of the earlier bills that were trying to make it through were. And I don't want to say harsh. I think it was they were harsh in terms of trying to save our budget. This Medicaid has been a huge budget buster here in Idaho. And so House Bill 345 is definitely a first step on that. So that's a good thing. The other thing, though, our Attorney General Raul Labrador announced that the Ninth Circuit has sided with Idaho in the restroom lawsuit. They upheld Senate Bill 1100, which was passed in 2023. This would keep the sexes separate when it comes to the restrooms, locker rooms, overnight stays when the band or the sports team goes on on a trip somewhere and they need to spend overnight. Who do you room with? Girls should room with girls. Boys should room with boys, regardless of whatever outfit they're wearing or whatever gender they're calling themselves these days. That's the law. And the Ninth Circuit upheld that. I don't know if it had anything to do with President Trump's recent declaration and executive order. It was kind of surprising considering how the judges have been acting federally with with Trump and Doge and all of that stuff. But we're happy to see it. It was huge news. I posted a tweet or an X post yesterday after that announced that was announced, that we call on all school districts in Idaho, especially the Boise School District, to immediately update their policy to be in compliance with the Idaho statute, or lawsuits will commence. Lawsuits will commence. You know, I have a good friend. I have a good lawyer friend who loves this topic. She's been on the show many times, and we're ready to file lawsuits if these school districts do not enforce the law. That is the law. The injunction was lifted immediately, and so that today is the law. So call up your school district and make sure that their policy aligns with the statute. If it doesn't, give me a buzz. Also, how the House resolution saying that Dr. Fauci has zero immunity, zero pardon. His federal pardon is not valid here in Idaho. That passed the Senate as well on a voice vote. Easy peasy, man. So we are an official Fauci Hunter state. If he sets foot here, you never know what might happen with the law. So good news there. I mean, it's a feel good resolution, but we feel good about it. And then lastly, Senate Bill 1023. Folks, we got to call the governor. We're going fast today. Throw up the graphic. Call the governor. He needs to sign the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. Folks, yesterday we saw a post from Rob Schneider. This hit Rob Schneider's X feed, where he was saying, hey, look at this bill that passed in Idaho. This is awesome. And the governor, you got to sign it. We saw Dr. Ryan Cole, Idaho's own Dr. Ryan Cole, who was at the forefront on the front lines of the COVID madness and trying to get the truth out there. He posted something about saying that he would even primary Governor Little if he didn't sign this. So there it is, folks. We posted that graphic to our X account, so be sure to share that around. You got some great bullet points on what this bill does. And during the broadcast yesterday, it came to me that this bill actually helps businesses. It actually helps businesses. It gives you cover to say, look, we are not going to force vaccines on you. We are not going to force medical interventions on you. We're not going to do anything like that anymore, because the law in Idaho says I can't do that. So for businesses that felt that they were being bombarded with threats of whatever from the federal government if they didn't go along with this, you saw it in the airline industry and so forth up and down the line, that they're that now at least in Idaho, businesses have a cover. You know, this is I can't do that. I can't impose medical interventions, because we know most Idahoans don't want to impose medical interventions on people. I mean, that's who we are. So. Okay, that was rapid fire. I want you guys to be sure you're following along. If you missed any of that, go back into the archives, get caught up on all of the issues. This is super, super important. Okay, one of the things we talked about at the very beginning of this session was that we wanted to at least acknowledge, because we didn't do this last session, we want to acknowledge and pay attention to our national delegation, our DC delegation. That's Senator Jim Risch, Senator Mike Crapo, Representative Mike Simpson, and Representative Congressman Russ Fulcher. And so the thing about Idaho, though, is that a lot of these guys don't really make as big a news. They're not out there making headlines and sound bites as you see from some other great folks like Rand Paul or Mike Lee or Thomas Massey or what's his name? Kennedy. What's his from Louisiana? John Kennedy. Is that his name? These guys, they say Josh Hawley, they have these great sound bites, these great moments. And as Idahoans, we always feel so left behind because we're like, why isn't someone as fiery as those guys here? And then they also put targets on their back because a lot of them are squishy, man. Their votes are bad. They go along to get along, and they just try to, like, slide under the radar a little bit. But things are different nowadays because we're here. You're out there, we're all active, we're all paying attention, and we're all trying to call balls and strikes as we see it. But we have a real special guest today that I want to bring on who has been calling balls and strikes for a long time. He is the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus. I'm going to have him on here to tell you all about what that does. So let's bring him in here. Mr. John Dennis, he's out there in California, my friend. I don't know how you do it still, but welcome to the program, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So explain to everybody what the Republican Liberty Caucus is. We pulled the scorecards. We'll show those here in a minute, but give us a little bit of background on what you guys do and how it helps folks like me and the rest of the folks here watching.
Yeah. So the Republican Liberty Caucus is a 527 for those who care about those sorts of things. But our main mission is to represent the liberty wing of the Republican Party, the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. Some of the folks who've been affiliated with us and who we've modeled ourselves after include Ron Paul and Rand Paul, in the Senate, Mike Lee, Thomas Massey. Going back, we're big fans of Robert Taft and Warren Buffett's father, who was a congressman out of Nebraska. And these are all folks who have one thing in common. They see the role of government as their role is to just protect your liberties. That's the role of government. That was sort of the revolutionary idea that upon which this country was founded, a great idea that came out of the Enlightenment. And that's where we think the country has gone off the rails by allowing government to get into lots of other things other than just protecting, your rights. So we watch folks. We endorse candidates. We take positions on issues. And one of the things that's caught a lot of attention over the last few years, we've been doing it for a while, but for the last few years in particular, it's caught a lot of attention, is we do these liberty indexes where we, after the year is over, we don't publish our position before. We go back and we take a cross section of votes in the House and votes in the Senate, and then assign points to each of those votes, and grade each member of the House, each Republican member of the House, and each Republican member of the Senate, and give them a score on a scale of 0 to 100. I'm sorry, Matt, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. Let's pull up, guys. Let's pull up the Senate card here first. I want to kind of ask you. Yeah. So this is from your website. We pulled it here. So scroll down. One of the here. So here's some of your top scorers. You highlight some of the lower end and your average. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about, because we're in Idaho, there's a few organizations here that do something similar. I mean, that if you're going to rate if you want to find out how your legislators are doing, you got to look at their votes, right? But some of these votes are very different than what we see here in Idaho, because a lot of them talk about voting for cloture. So it's not actually voting on a specific issue. So it sounds like some of this stuff is voting on a specific method or strategy. Can you explain a little bit about like why you get so granular with some of these votes?
Well, without getting into specifics, we a lot of times. Let's take a recent fight in Washington over the continuing resolution. We haven't passed a budget in, I don't know, 2 decades or something like that in Washington, and so sometimes these fights are procedural, but they have massive implications. So, like, for example, instead of voting to pass the continuing resolution, there should have been a vote on a budget, and we could have had actually 12 separate bills addressing different issues, as Congressman Thomas Massey wanted. So these are sometimes these procedural matters have massive implications as to the direction of Washington and then, of course, the direction of the country. This year we had a larger number of them, an exceptionally large number this year as opposed to other years. This year we also had, particularly and I think it was in the Senate, we had a lot of foreign policy related questions or votes, and that really impacted the scores. I mean, we should talk a little bit about the drift in the average score in the House and in the Senate for that matter. I can't hear you, man. I'm sorry. Terribly sorry.
Man, I'm having a real hard time with my button over here. Let's talk about the average score thing. Up at the top, if you guys can scroll to the top, there is the average score in the Senate was 46,
which actually, believe it or not, is, I think, a slightly up from years past. By the way, just to remind your viewers, this isn't the average score of all senators or average score of Democrats. This is the average score of Republicans.
Right.
And I dare anybody to go look at that, look at the methodology, look at the bills we picked. If you don't understand them, read a little bit about them and tell us that, where you stand on those positions. And I would bet 9 out of 10 Republicans would choose what our position was every single time. So the reason why I say that is because that tells you that the average Republican senator is not voting the way Republicans should be voting. And yeah, I mean, if you go back up, I'd like to take a look at that, the average. Now, I will say, if you look at the sort of the top folks here, we had actually some pleasant surprises last year. Like Mike Braun as a senator last year scored really high. J.D. Vance in his first term was a very pleasant surprise. We didn't expect to get that out of him based on how he campaigned, for U.S. Senate. But he was a great scorer. Now, unfortunately, we lost them both. Mike Braun is now the governor of Indiana, and J.D., of course, is the vice president of the United States. But we do have some solid folks here, and people have bumped up their scores. Josh Hawley is up from where he was. He was a 70 last year. He's up, and really happy about that. Marsha Blackburn is up quite a bit. Josh Hawley's fellow Missourian is Eric Schmidt. He has a nice score here. They actually have the best Senate delegation of any state.
Yeah, well, then let's talk about Idaho here, because I was surprised to see that, because here in Idaho we're very strict when it comes to liberty. I mean, the folks out there are super passionate, and so when we looked at the score, and the average score for the House was 34, but when we looked at Idaho, the delegation from Idaho, Mike Crapo is at a 60. And Jim Risch was at I think 56 in this last score. And so they're both above average. But when you look at, like I mentioned, a couple of folks that always they always get their sound bites on the news programs, like John Kennedy and Ted Cruz. John Kennedy is a 50 and Ted Cruz is a 75. And so, a lot of times people, if you're not 100 or 98, they just want to write you off. But when you look at the average, I'm trying to figure out here, like, where do we as a large electorate, where should we be pointing our ammunition at? Because, people like Susan Collins and Murkowski are horrible, but here in Idaho, we don't really have anything to do with how they get elected. So when you do have somebody that's above average, I mean, we always want better, but it doesn't help when Trump puts out a tweet, backing Jim Risch, if you're not a Jim Risch fan,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How do we parse all this stuff?
Yeah, I'm friends with Rand and Rand Paul, and we spent a lot of time together. Particularly last year, we spent a week in California, traveling all over, and that was one of the reasons that Rand never really got around to endorsing Donald Trump. He endorsed him after the election because the president gets advice from different people, and he was choosing folks who weren't Liberty candidates in some of those primaries. And so that, created some friction. And then I think we're right. I think Rand is right about that, because in the end, then these guys go and vote, and they vote kind of predictably. Kennedy, by the way, and Cruz, their scores actually went up quite a bit. I'm happy.
Good.
Because Cruz was way down there. He was down I think 55 last year, which is shocking for a guy who presents himself as a liberty guy, but his voting record tells you a different story. As far as the senators in Idaho, I mean, they're not terrible. They're above average. They made some good votes this year, but I would say, given how Republican and frankly how liberty oriented the Idaho electorate is, they're kind of lagging. They're kind of disappointing. So one recommendation I would make is, impact and influence your senators is make sure that they see this index. These guys pay attention to these things. I mean, Rand always wants to know when it's coming out. Thomas wants to know when it's coming out. They really pay attention. Paul Gosar was upset with us a few years ago because he only got a 90. And he wouldn't come on our Twitter space when we did the release on it. So, and I like Paul, and it's sort of a minor thing, but yeah, they watch this very carefully. Even Justin Amash, when he was running for the Senate, went back and asked for all of our liberty indexes going back to the 2010, and created his own chart showing how well he scored on our index. So make sure that Rich and Crapo know that they're being tracked, and that they got to live up to to their job as defenders of liberty.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't hurt them to meet with some PR folks and come up with some good lines. I mean, it sounds petty, but you saw the opening of our show. Like, there are some fantastic folks here in Idaho who know exactly how to speak from the heart and defend liberty. And you want as a state like Idaho, you want your national delegation to speak that way. And oftentimes it doesn't come across as genuine when they do, if they ever do. And then when you compare it to some of their scores, then you kind of, it makes you wonder if you're really being represented the way that you should. So guys, let's put up the House again real quick, because we don't want to forget the House before we let John go here.
And I want to just make a quick plug here, Matt.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important that folks in Idaho join the Republican Liberty Caucus. Our strongest chapter is in Florida. They go up to Tallahassee every year for legislator days. And believe me, those folks show up because we are active. We got a strong volunteer base. Our endorsement means something, and they respond. Well, we have a great guy named Cornell Razor up there in that area, and he's the representative for the Republican Liberty Caucus in Idaho. Sign up at rlc.org. It's super easy to join and connect with Cornell, and let's build a really strong chapter in Idaho. And if you guys do that, trust me, you'll have an impact and influence on your state legislators and your federal representatives as well.
Yeah, that's great. Cornell is fantastic. We're a big fan of Cornell. He's a pledge signer with our organization as well, and he definitely speaks from the heart. So that's good, folks. Okay, I've looked at the list here. Just by comparison, Fulcher is at a 76, which is pretty good, I would say. It's not too bad, not too shabby. Mike Simpson is at an 11. Let me repeat that again. Mike Simpson is at an 11, which is the same score as Dan Crenshaw, which I happen to run across. So at least we announced those scores here. I'm going to talk to Cornell Razor on this and I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get involved with him on this issue and on this stuff to keep these people at least notified, because there are other scoring outlets out there, but I think what you do here is particularly interesting, especially when it comes to just a lot of these procedural votes that prevent us from getting to a balanced budget. I mean, like you said, the fight that they had at the beginning here was like, can we at least all agree that you said we would? I mean, wasn't it Massey who said we were supposed to do this in September? You said if we do it in December after the election, but we have to get sworn in so we can do it in March. And now you're telling me we got to do it later. It's like, when are we going to start doing the balanced budget? Do you have any hope that they're going to do it in September now, like they've been promised?
No, not a ton. I think the only way that happens, Matt, is if we stay on them, really, put it out there. The one good thing about the president is that he follows social media, his staff follows social media, and if we can, push back, I think they'll pay attention. Also, telling was the amount of fundraising that Thomas did. Thomas does not like to fundraise. He's in a seat where he doesn't really have to, but he raised an inordinate amount of money, showing the president and his followers that that people are with Thomas on this. This is the big change. Look, the executive orders are all fantastic, but frankly, they're junk food compared to the budget. right? I mean, that's the meal. And and to get something sustainable, something that's lasting, we have to address this budget, this federal deficit leading to the massive level of federal debt. The president's legacy will be completely, damaged if he does not address this issue. And so he's got to really bring Thomas into the fold and the liberty scene. And in that way, maybe we'll see some progress in September.
Yeah. Very good. All right, John. Well, where can people follow you and keep track of your work and get in touch if they want to start a chapter or we have a chapter here in Idaho, but how do people get involved?
Yeah, growing the chapter is really important. And I'm telling you, it'll have a big impact. So it's rlc.org, as in Republican Liberty Caucus.org, rlc.org. You can follow us on Twitter at R Liberty Caucus, and you can follow me at Real John Dennis.
Great. All right, John. Well, good to see you. We'll check back in with you again.
Love it.
Take care.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
You got it, brother.
Cheers.
All right, folks. Very good. We'll take a short break. We'll be back and catch you up on the rest of what's going on in the House. They're back at it down there. So we'll be right back.
And that's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among a world silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
Very good, folks. Welcome back. Having some microphone issues here today, but we'll get it sorted out. The House is at it right now. They're looking at House Bill 416. Kent Marmon, representative out of Caldwell, was just speaking. Let's see if this debate continues. You guys want to bring it up? Oh, we got Dale Hawkins. Come on now.
When the good gentleman brought this forward, there were people who implied that this would cost more money, take more people to do. That was never the implication, and that is not what the good gentleman from 7 delivered to us. What he delivered is that we have an existing auditing program going on for the different agencies, and right now we're dealing with education. And those agency auditing that occurs when there is found to be problems, that would be the trigger. It already exists. What I'm amazed by today is we're here at a body that continually talks about transparency and keeping control of the people's money. We bring forward something that might make that step, and now I'm hearing that, well, I really enjoy this, but I really like this, but I would contend that if the good lady from 6 would like this to be spread to other departments, that she can work on a bill to do that. Woo! As well as anybody else on this floor. Right now, we are dealing with one, and that's called education. And many, many times in the Education Committee, we hear about a lack of funds. And then we learn that funds might have went over here, or we created this and funds went over there. What this bill intends to do is make sure that funds that are allocated for an area in education actually wind up in the area. I'm amazed that this seems to be complex. The other thing I see here is that, well, there's not 6 pages of explanation. No, there is no confusion. It's very direct. It's very short. It's very concise. I think it's very clear that it needs a green light. Thank you very much.
Man, Dale Hawkins, I'm telling you folks, fantastic stuff there. This is a no-brainer. And I love him calling people out. I like this, but BS. Come on, Coach E. Let's see what she says.
Fine, I've got you covered.
Great the bill.
Thank you. I'll try not to repeat everything that's been said, but just a couple of thoughts. First, this is kind of my version actually of Doge. It's getting and digging down and finding out where we have the inefficiencies. Now remember this, some of us serve, all of us serve on different committees. I happen to have been on education and still am. I would absolutely not support a bill that came and tried to include all the other agencies. Do you know how big that bill would be? It would fail. You would tell us to take it back. It's far better to focus on one at a time. Now, let me tell you something that should probably hit each one of you as it does me at home all the time. We gave the teachers a raise session or two ago, and we worked hard to give the teachers a raise. And then at my debates, guess what the teachers say? We didn't get a raise. Well, you should have gotten a raise. We gave you the money to get a raise. Well, we didn't get that raise. Or I got a little bit of a raise, but it wasn't the full amount of the raise. Why didn't they get the raise? Because they didn't have to spend the money as we directed them to get the raise. So now we're on the hook again because we don't support our teachers with the raise. When I give money and vote to give money for a raise, by gosh, I expect all that money to go to the teachers for a raise. That's what we're dealing with. Give this the green light.
Brother Drake, gentleman, 25.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the lady from 32 a question, if I may.
Late 32 yields a question.
Yeah.
The lady yields.
Yeah, good lady. You just heard the testimony about the teacher salaries, and I'm wondering if you could explain better when we said we were going to give $6,400 for every teacher, why every teacher didn't get $6,400.
Lady 32.
Mr. Speaker, good gentleman from 25?
25.
25? Yes. I would be delighted to explain that because it gives me an opportunity to make another pitch for a new funding formula next year. When we distributed that money, I believe it was $63.59 per teacher it was supposed to go out. We did so on the basis of the funding formula, the number of FTPs that are funded by the state under the current funding formula. You have a lot of districts who have very high supplemental levies. I won't name names, but I think you can think of who those are. They are able to hire a lot more teachers and a lot more staff because one of those districts doesn't even have to run a levy, a voter-approved levy, to get those funds. Most other districts do. So we sent money out according to the funding formula and all the teachers that pays for. If a district hires teachers beyond that, they're expected and must use local or federal funds to pay for those. We expected them at the time to use local and federal funds to make pay that same amount to those teachers that they hire behind the state. That didn't happen. That is what explains why some teachers got significantly less than $6,000 for their raise that year.
25.
Thank you, good lady. I'd like to debate.
Gentleman has the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In committee, I voted no on this bill because of this similar question that was brought up, because a lot of it was brought up about teacher salaries. And I believe that our funding formula, which is called the Foundation Program, Chapter 10 of Title 33, is so complicated that, but it's so flexible for school districts to be able to use the money as they see fit for salaries and who's going to get salaries, et cetera. But I believe the bill is narrowly written, and I've determined in my own mind that when it says specifically and identifiable and certain expenses, that we're talking about funding that comes out of JFAC or out of a formula that specifically says this amount of money goes to this subject, this purpose. and that if it's not used for that purpose, they don't have the flexibility to go to use it for some other purpose. And I feel comfortable that the bill is narrow as it is, and maybe as overly simplified as it is a fine budget or a bill. So thank you. I'm gonna be
Further debate on the motion? Hearing none. Good lady from 32, for what purpose do you rise?
To debate for the second time, Mr. Speaker.
Is there anybody who wishes to debate for the first time? I think we've about hit everybody. Good lady from 32 can debate for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to offer some reassurance to the body that all agencies are held to the same standard, the same governmental accounting standards. And so rest assured that the language we put in appropriation bills around accountability and conditions, limitations, and restrictions means they are supposed to spend it for the reason that we sent. There is still an ongoing criminal investigation going on right now in one agency when that was found to have not been the case, and we had to report it to the Attorney General's office. State agencies are subject to certain transfer restrictions. When we send money in state agencies, we send it for personnel, for capital, for trustee and benefit, or for capital outlay. State agencies do have flexibility in those expense categories, limited ability to transfer funds between those expense categories. The problem is public schools are not state agencies, but the State Department of Education is a state agency, and that's who we are holding accountable here, is to make sure that when we send the money to the State Department of Education, we actually transfer it into a giant fund called the Public School Income Fund. The State Department then disperses that money out. And so I want to assure you that when we have long-standing audit findings, Division of Occupational Licensing is another example. We have had long-standing material findings. So we finally created policy in the appropriation bill for a couple of years to get them corrected. And then this good gentleman to my right picked that up and put it into a policy bill. So it's a permanent policy about how they use their funding. That's the situation here. If you pull up our transparency website and go to the single page report on the fiscal year 2024 audit fact sheet, you will see that there are uncorrected findings going back to July 1st of 2020. Those continue right up through 2023. Now, we did give them an auditor last year to help them fix this problem. But right now, these material findings are a reflection of the State Department being unable to verify the accuracy of payments to school districts to the tune of over $3 billion. That needs fixed. Beyond that, some of the money that we do send, we call discretionary. That means it has no strings. You can spend it on whatever you need to spend it on. If that's health insurance, if that's more salary money, if that's athletics, if that's full day kindergarten. Actually, I shouldn't say literacy, you can use the literacy money for that. But districts are using that for full day kindergarten. They can use discretionary for kindergarten, sorry, because they can use it to pay salaries, which is what pays the difference between what the state sends for a half day and what a district might spend for if they're choosing to offer full day. So this, I applaud the good gentleman. He worked with our auditors actually to get this language, and it is our duty to make sure that the taxpayer funds we're in charge of are spent according to the law. And this is going to help us do that. I would again ask for your green light. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion. Good lady from 19 for the second time. Let's debate the bill.
Thank you, good speaker. And I just wanted to comment on that because I think what was just brought up helps us answer the question about why teachers didn't get that full salary. It is because the formula, again, a cart before the horse, is such that the state does not in the case of kindergarten, actually pay for the full salary of a kindergarten teacher. And so when you get that lump sum and you say 6% for, every teacher, but you don't actually pay for all those teachers, then they have to distribute it out. So now if you've got 30 full-day kindergarten teachers that you've got to supplement half of their salaries, that's going to reduce the amount for every other teacher as to their raise. And then we add on other situations like specialists, and that's what happens. Those are the kind of nuances I am talking about here. It is not so cut and dry as to say, well, they didn't use it for this or they moved it around for that. There are reasons. And I heard that there's lots of transparency and there's lots of accountability in the appropriations. So let's make sure that we have all the specifics that we are requiring before we demand that requirement.
For debate on the motion. Gentleman from Levin, for what purpose you ride?
To debate the bill, Mr. Speaker.
For the second time?
I know first, if I may.
Okay, so we passed that up. So would you like to ask unanimous consent of the body to debate for this?
Folks, we've been listening here, obviously, to House Bill 416. This bill seemed like a very simple bill. We just want to make sure that the money intended for schools is being used the proper way, and this has sparked debate all around the circle. Incredible here. Lucas Kaler just stood up, asked permission to speak and debate for the first time during round 2 of debate. And apparently someone objected, so he's not going to be able to do that. Kyle Harris is going to close out the debate here, and then they'll go to a vote. So we've come this far. Let's listen in and finish this off.
Right now, there is zero accountability. When these schools and these State Department of Education, the State Board of Education, there's audits that exist where they've been out of compliance for over 6 years and nothing's being done to fix it because there is no accountability. For some reason, this bill keeps turning into a teacher pay bill. This is not a teacher pay bill. This is a bill that deals with allocated funds, directly allocated funds. So it's not general funds, it's not discretionary funds, it's allocated funds. So when we allocate funds to technology for computers and we give a school $20,000 and they use 10, they have to give 10 back. It doesn't need a trigger. It doesn't need anything. These schools know when they receive money for a certain purpose, it has to be used for that purpose. It's in their audit. It exists already. When it is a line item allocation, they know that that money is only for that line item. And if they use it for something else, they know they are using it wrong. It is misappropriation of funds. This bill simply gives JFAC the teeth to take the money back if they don't give it back to us willingly. This is as easy as it gets. I'm asking for your green light. Thank you.
Hey, gentlemen, base closed. Question, House Bill 416 pass the House.
All right. Well, let's bring up Brian Ullman here if he's with us, and we can both watch this vote. Brian, good to see you.
I've been watching this one as well. The debate is really interesting and clarifying about how some people think about accountability for taxpayer funds.
Voted.
Yeah. And look, this is a no-brainer bill. Look at that. And you've only
changed their vote.
The usual suspects, Brian.
Thompson votes aye. Galaviz votes nay.
Where did Representative Rappel go? She was on the floor earlier.
One absent, excused, already having voted in favor of House Bill 416. House Bill 416 is passed House. Correction title.
No correction to title.
Title approved. Bill be transferred to the Senate. Jump 22.
Yeah.
The roll call
Very
used
good.
for suspension rule.
Looks like they're going to pull some more bills off the second reading calendar, trying to get as much done. And it's interesting the way they do that. They rearrange the calendar. They might have some bills ready on third reading, but maybe the sponsor's not ready, or maybe they don't have the votes whipped yet, or maybe they just. Oftentimes, it seems like what they're doing is they're trying to get through the House bills first, so they'll go ahead and do some House bills that are sitting on the second reading calendar before they do Senate bills that are waiting on the third reading calendar. So. Not technically according to the rules, but no, that's why they suspend the rules.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you want to make, if you're getting towards the end of the session, you want to make sure you get all your business done and send it over to the other side so that they can finish their job. In some states they do what's called crossover day, where the House will be doing all of their House bills. The Senate will be doing all of their Senate bills. And once they pass each chamber, they stay in each chamber until crossover day, when they literally all the bills cross over, and then they do round 2 basically of their session and go through all those bills. Here in Idaho, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it makes for a very interesting session. Well, back to that bill that just passed. I mean, I was surprised at how much debate was going on there. I mean, it was incredible. There you have the tally. I mean, you see the usual suspects, of course, the Democrats, who I think they used to like accountability and transparency. Apparently they don't anymore. But they whip in the usual suspects: Weber, Wheeler, Raybould, Nelson, Mickelson, Sauter, McCann. I mean, Garner, right? Oh no, Garner went green. Furryman, and they just go along with this narrative here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, some of the debate against it was, well, we should do this for all the agencies, not why are we singling out education? And there's also debate saying, well, we can't put this in because they don't have the capacity or capability. Representative Church was saying that schools can't actually account the way we want them to account. And well, if that's true, then that's a problem, and they need to figure it out. Because this is, like Representative Harris said, this is allocated money. This is JFAC and the legislature coming in and saying, you can use this money for this purpose. And the schools just take the money, put it in a big pot, and use it however they want, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And so the debate against this didn't seem, I mean, it wasn't convincing to me that, that this bill had those problems. It seemed like, as usual, people were looking for a reason to oppose a bill, and because they didn't want to say why they really oppose it.
Yeah. They don't, because then they'll get caught not being a Republican. I'm just saying. Okay, well, that's what's going on now. They're obviously they're doing the rest of their bills. The Senate is doing their thing right now too. Anyway, let's talk about taxes, though, Brian. There's been the big theme this year. The governor came in and said he wanted to provide $100 million in tax relief. And then Republican leadership came over the top and said, no, we want to do more, like 350, 400 million, 500, whatever it was. And so they've been passing these tax bills, and then they get signed. And then we have this trailer bill come through that seemed to just sort of like confuse a lot of people, and not really we're trying to figure out exactly what this trailer bill does. Is it going to delay these tax cuts? Is it going to raise taxes again, or are we going to wait? Like, it was very confusing. So Representative Ehlers, and therefore we had House Bill 412. The hearing for House Bill 412 happened this morning, but it was also brought with a new RS, meaning he was going to swap out 412 for another new version of this bill that would address these problems. What I want to do, and this was an entire presentation, and I think we deserve to listen to it, because I think he goes through each point of what this bill does. And I think we should do our due diligence and listen to it and see what this bill does. And like I said, it's a little bit of a longer clip here, longer presentation. So let's just sit back, listen to it, and then we'll come back on the other side, Brian, if you can, and just and wrap up the highlights from this, if you don't mind. Let's go, guys. Let's do it.
You're here to discuss House Bill 412 and routing slip 32715. And I'd like also, right off the bat, Mr. Chairman, if I could have permission to refer to pending legislation.
Permission granted. Go ahead.
Thank you. These two things together relate to taxation. And it's about taxation, some technical corrections, some clarification, and some cleanup. And I appreciate the work of those that have helped me with this. This is going to relate to some trailer bill to House Bill 40, which was our income tax relief, House Bill 304, which was our property tax relief, and House Bill 354, which was another tax policy bill. And I've worked with the sponsors of all those bills to craft this legislation. So what I'd like to do is walk through House Bill 412, and then I'll talk about the RS and the two differences on there. And then I'll take questions. So House Bill 412, the first page is just going back to House Bill 40, which is getting the definitions right around who gets the military benefits. It's having the same outcome. It just wasn't written as clearly in House Bill 40. This clears it up. Then if we go to page 4, this is some clear up and clarification the Tax Commission asked for. Sometimes accountants get creative or they get confused about when a tax year really starts. And so this adds language for when it's commencing on or after particular years and what that tax rate was for those particular years. So that's just adding explicit clarity around the income tax rates. If you look at page 5, then the other change here. So this is going to the statute of limitations. This one's specifically for sales tax. In most times, the statute of limitations in terms of when the tax commission could go back and audit you is 3 years. For some reason, if you hadn't ever filed a return, there was unlimited amount of time they should go back to. So this is just making it consistent with our other statute of limitations for tax returns. They can go back 3 years if you had a reasonable belief to think you didn't have to file tax returns. So it's not unlimited. And consistent with paragraph B above it, if it's fraudulent, as already in code, they can continue to go back and look. So that doesn't change. We'll go to page 7. This is a little clarification for something we've worked on in the past around when the tax commission can charge you interest if they're auditing you. And the goal is when the ball is in their court, in the tax commission court, they shouldn't be allowed to tax you interest. You have no control over that. They can just hold on to it for a long time and charge you interest. So this just clarifies it that when the clock will start and stop, this is once they identify your return for a possible audit, then they can't just sit and hold it and charge you interest on that. We'll go now to page 8. This is really similar to the statute of limitations we talked about earlier, but this is for income tax. Once again, it's normally 3 years back that they can go look for audits. This makes that same limitation for those that haven't filed a return. And once again, the same thing for fraudulent returns that doesn't change. They can continue to go back if you've committed fraud. Next, we're going to skip a few pages because that's just, there's no changes on those. And we will go to, I think it's page 16. So this is just really an accounting reference. If you've watched the Economic Outlook Committee or been involved in JFAC, there's confusion between how DFM and the gentleman on the second floor's office puts a revenue number and how LSO looks at it with this $330 million. You know, is it in the gross revenue? Do you net it out? Do you add it back in? It's just created a lot of confusion. So what this does is it will make sure that DFM and LSO and all of us are speaking the same language when it comes to revenue. That it's going to be in the gross amount, and then the $330 million will be like any other expenditure or appropriation. It will come out of expenditures. It keeps the language in there that it's still going to be spent, the $330 million, the same way for education, for public schools, educational support. If you look on page 16, lines 30 and 31, that is the same language as used in appropriation bills for public education. They call it public schools educational support. It's still going to stay in the base for education, in the base budget. And this is the same language used in Idaho Code 33-1002 about the public schools educational support program. So it will continue going to education. That's mostly just the way we account for it. And then if we go to page 17, this is where we're going to get into what the RS does. So this is about the Property Tax Relief Fund. And there was some confusion created here. I admit I didn't write the fiscal note on House Bill 14 as well. So in the RS, I've redrafted the fiscal note. And one of the changes in the RS 32715 is to add clarity around the property tax relief. So let's go to the RS, and you go to the very last page, RS 32715, page 18. For the property tax relief, this is really a timing of the budget. And there's confusion between the fiscal year and the calendar year. So fiscal year 26 starts actually July 1st, 2025. And it goes until June 30th, 2026. So the $100 million will be in fiscal year 26. But the $100 million property tax relief will actually occur in the calendar year 2025. That's how it was in House Bill 40. The tax relief was always going to come to the taxpayers. For those of you that aren't finance or accountant geeks, all you care about is when do I get my $100 million in property tax relief. The $100 million, as promised in House Bill 40 for property tax relief, will occur in calendar year 2025. And this explicitly states that in writing, that this transfer will occur no later than August 31st of 2025. And so that $100 million, and I've talked to the people involved that need to transfer this money, will occur, and that gives it enough time to go to the local districts to be part of their budgeting process so they can get that property tax relief on your 2025 property tax bill. So that $100 million of property tax relief will occur this year. That's one of the changes in the RS. And then the last thing is a trailer to House Bill 354. Had some confusion there, but if you go to page 2 of the RS, here's the other change with the ratio in terms of market value. So it's tightening that up. 354 said you need to be within the range of 90 to 110. That's a 20 percentage point gap. This tightens this down to 95 to 105. This actually helps us as inconsistent. If you remember, we did House Bill 329 with the rate regulated utilities. And in that court case, it did reference that. It basically said, hey, if you were within the 5%, then this wouldn't be an issue. These lawsuits wouldn't be an issue. So it's consistent with that legislation that we passed as well. And so, Mr. Chairman, those are the changes. I would be happy to answer any questions. And I guess I should explain as well, our intent is having this public hearing on 4/12 and these couple of changes in the RS, that we would just hold 4/12 in committee. And
yeah,
that
and
if
that's
the committee is
exactly
willing
what they
to
did,
introduce
folks. They held
RS.
that original bill, they passed the RS, and here we are moving forward. Brian, what's your take on this?
Goodness, my take is that tax policy is really complicated. But
Then let's just get rid of them. Let's get rid of them all.
a lot of folks were very worried when the initial trailer bill 412 came out, saying that it shifted the property tax relief that we were promised for this year to the next year, which meant an entire year would go by where we don't get that property tax relief. But it sounds like, if that was the case in the original bill, that was an error, and they're fixing that, and we'll have it in calendar year 2025, which is fiscal year 2026, which, why do they do that? But that's a different story.
Yeah. And look, fiscal year, calendar year, those types of things, I guess when you're talking past each other or you're working with people, I guess those things kind of happen. Remember, this is the same body, Brian, that accidentally got rid of the presidential primary in this state. So, yeah, accidentally. And again, everybody can sit back and come up with their own conspiracy theories about this, but this is the facts. I mean, this is where we're at right now. And so we'll see how this thing goes forward. Okay. Very good. I know it was a bit of a trek to get through that, folks, but I think you'd rather just hear it right from the horse's mouth on this stuff. I think it's always impartial. It's better to be impartial in that sense by just watching what it is and then imparting your opinion on it afterwards. That's fine with me, but at least let's hear it out.
I just want to add that bill has been printed, so if you want to read the entire thing yourself or upload it to ChatGPT and have it summarize it for you, it's House Bill 435 now.
There you go, 435. Uploading bills to ChatGPT. I tried to get ChatGPT to give me a simple tally of some numbers, and it was wrong. So, it can help guide you, but it ain't certainly going to pull that ship right into port every time.
Always remember Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Trust but verify. That's right. All right, Brian. Well, we're going to head out of here. It's the Friday show, and we're hitting the bottom of the hour, but what are we working on? We're switching your articles to come out on Sunday because I like people to just sit back, relax, and read a nice almond article on Sunday. So what do we got in the hopper, you think?
Oh goodness, there's a lot to cover. There's a lot that happened. I wrote on my platform yesterday about how the House killing some budget bills and what that might mean. I mean, one thing it means is that we're going to be here a while because they have to go back to JFAC for retooling. So there's all sorts of things we can cover. There was an RS brought up this morning in Senate State Affairs about abortion, wanting to clarify some of our laws and maybe tweak them a little bit. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, very good. All right, folks, be sure to follow him, Gem State Brian. We got your stuff scrolling there on the bottom, so that's good. Have a great weekend, Brian.
Yeah, you too.
All right. All right, folks, very good. We're going to head out of here, but not without reminding you, we got to get the governor to sign 1023. We got to get the governor to sign 1023. You can call up Ellers there and have him help out too, but the governor's got to sign the Idaho Medical Freedom Act. This thing made waves. This thing made waves across the country. Like I said earlier, Rob Schneider was tweeting about it. You had Dr. Ryan Cole, who's here in Idaho, but he has a huge national following. He said little better sign it. And so that's what we want to see. Hey, good for you, Deborah, down there. She said she called governor's office yesterday, asked her to tell the governor to sign 1023. And she said she would relay it. That's how it works, folks. It was that easy. It's that easy, folks. It's that easy. So give the governor a call. Give the governor a call. Follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble. Head over to idahosignal.live so you can listen to the program. Real quick on the Rumble thing. Every time I tell you folks, if you're watching on Facebook and YouTube, to head over to Rumble, you do. Every day we get new subscribers. We get new people following us on Rumble. So if you're one of the folks watching us on Facebook and YouTube, I highly encourage you to head over to Rumble, set up an account, make sure you've got, it's just your backup plan. It's the bunker. It's the bunker of social media. If everything goes to heck, you can head over to Rumble and find all sorts of good stuff there. So that's good. And then, yes, folks, you can also tell the governor that he's got to reinstate Major David Worley. We've got that pinned over there on Rumble. That's our pinned video, is our interview with the Liberty Counsel guy on Major David Worley's case at the Idaho Army National Guard. So go watch that interview. Here's what's happening, folks. Here's what's happening. Well, I'll be traveling next week, be headed down to Boise. We won't be on the air. We won't be on the air. We might come on the air. We'll let you know, but we might show some hearings and that sort of thing. But I'll be headed down there for what would probably be the final week. So folks, just keep tabs on our X account, our Facebook account, and please just keep active and share this content. You know, we make sure we do all of these. I don't know if you know this, if you only watch us live, we take every bit of these programs and then we clip out the segments with our guests or with the topics, and then those are uploaded as well. So you can share those around and get people talking about the topic that you care about the most. We did have a voicemail to play, and unfortunately, the voicemail device that we use died. So everything just kind of is dying. My ear things, the mute button, all this stuff is like dying at the tail end of the show here. So yeah. But we do have a nice surprise to leave you with. In the Know Idaho, our great friend Lily Allman. She has a brand new video that we're going to sign off with. So please enjoy this, and we'll keep tabs on social media. We'll be back soon. Thanks for having us, folks. Watch this.
We're 2 months into Trump's tyrannical reign in America, and unfortunately, things have only gone downhill from the beginning. We have closed borders, which have immediately caused an anti-crisis, kind of like you think things were going to get worse, but they got better sort of thing. We don't know what to do with that.
Well, I think that the main area that we're seeing problems in is the world economic side of this politics issue. We're seeing prices radically drop all over the economy, and the real question is, how are corporations going to keep making exorbitant amount of profits with government lobbying if their prices are not being sold for such an inflated rate? We have to be considerate to the top 1% members of the working class, and that is not what President Trump is doing.
No, unfortunately not. He's looking at abolishing the Department of Education, which, what's that going to do for our young people? Obviously, our Department of Education is doing doing a stand-up job. Look at the quality of American children that they've been turning out for the past 50, 100 years. We're not looking forward to seeing what comes of that.
Speaking of not looking forward to what's on the horizon, the abysmal way that he's been treating politics on the world stage as it pertains to global conflicts. Already the war with Hamas is over, which begs the question, what are our young people going to be doing on college campuses if not protesting and creating autonomous zones?
And you know, we have our stand-up IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Obviously, these people need more support, not less. We need more employees, not less. We need people knocking on doors day and night, trying to collect your tax dollars so that we can send them to our friends all around the world and, you know, locally, your neighbors.
The real question is why the unfair treatment of our tax-paying government employees? Why all of these demands by tyrannical Doge owner Devil Musk, as he's being nicknamed? Why all of this tyrannical overreach in requiring these outrageous demands of our hardworking government employees, such as filling out timesheets or responding to emails? Does he not understand the gravity of the situation as it pertains to hours and hours and theoretical whole minutes of work that these government employees are doing? It's just criminal.
That's absolutely right. You know, I think our democracy is really at risk here, and we don't know what the coming days will hold, but we can only hope and pray to whatever gods you may worship and show up and riot whenever possible. So that seems like the step forward.
Now over to Jones for the weather.
Bill, I think it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.